Well, as with a lot of things now, we're going to start with a video. And this was put together by the AOC communications staff, and I think you'll find it enjoyable and a nice kind of quick primer on what the commission was all about. Now, despite all the focus that I'll be talking about in terms of technology, I'm personally not that high tech. So let me see if I can do the one touch here and get this started. When our state was formed over 200 years ago, the role of the courts was to protect people's rights by providing a fair and accessible forum for the resolution of their disputes. On several landmark occasions, our court system has recurred to these fundamental principles of fairness, accessibility, and effective management through commissions like this one.
What we will have, if we have electronic filing, is a database, and we will have the means for doing better, for analyzing how we are doing, and for being more efficient. Electronic filing not just makes the courts more accessible, but it makes them more efficient and self-conscious and self-aware.
But today, we're on the threshold of treating juveniles as they should be treated, as juveniles, different from adults, housing them in different facilities, and sheltering them and giving them the kind of resources that will help them resume their lives.
That we have a glut of unemployed and underemployed lawyers in this state. At the same time, we have many people who, both individuals and businesses, with significant legal needs that are going underserved or not being served at all.
Our judiciary needs to be accessible to the people. It needs to be efficient. It needs to certainly be fair and impartial, both in perception as well as in fact.
Once we know what we have, then we can start trying to use those reports and analytics to figure out how to improve. What are we doing right? What can we do better? What do we need to change?
62 committee meetings, 4 public hearings, and over 4,000 volunteer hours later, you've produced targeted action items that will dramatically increase the fairness, accessibility, and effective management of our courts. For a society to thrive, it must have a collective sense that fairness and justice prevail for everyone, regardless of wealth or status or heritage. These principles are unchanging. Our faith in these principles is rooted in the bedrock belief that they must be pursued in order to maintain the public's trust and confidence in our courts. All right, I am Mark Martin, and I thank Donna for that very kind introduction, and it's always a pleasure to be here at the John Locke Society, and particularly as a part of the Shaftesbury Series luncheons. I thought what I would try to work through today are a few aspects about the Commission and some of the priorities that we're now pursuing at this point in time. But before I start, I want to make 2 important introductions. My wife never gets to hear me speak, and so Kim Martin, if you would stand and wave to everyone, and pleasure to have her with us today. And also the Executive Director of the Commission, Will Robinson. Will, if you would stand and wave. I want you to imagine a court system where you can negotiate and pay for minor offenses online without going to a courthouse, where you can pull up an opinion of any court, any document that was a part of that case, 24/7, without having to pay fees at the courthouse to park and pay a fee for parking, and then to walk in and stand in line and then spend a few hours to try to find a document, some proceeding in our court system. And I want you to consider a court system where the technology, the websites, every aspect are on par with the private sector. And so you go on the court websites, they work well, they're user-friendly, and you come away with a very positive feeling about the interaction you've had. Well, make no mistake about it, that's where we're trying to go. And so as you reimagine that court system, that is the court system that we are trying to head towards. And that's why we had the commission. We want to make sure that what takes place in the courtroom is the truth. We want to make sure that forensics are done right. We want to make sure that justice occurs in all of our courthouses in 100 counties. The judicial branch of North Carolina is composed of over 6,000 employees. As I said, we have courthouses in all 100 counties, and several counties have more than one courthouse. We also have about 550 independently elected officials, judges, district attorneys, clerks of court. And these are personnel that the voters of North Carolina select, either in district-wide, county-wide, or at-large elections at the statewide level. And I know everybody is very familiar with the fact that Supreme Court and Court of Appeals elections are statewide. And every 2 years, when we have elections for members of the General Assembly, typically the voters of North Carolina are selecting members for the Supreme Court and the Court of Appeals. And I know I need not remind people that the Supreme Court has 7 members and sits en banc, which means that all 7 of us vote in every case, every matter that is brought before the court. And the Court of Appeals, our second-tier appellate court, has 15 members. That court functions in panels of 3, and so we can have 5 panels every month hearing cases. And this was an innovation of the 1960s, to have intermediate appellate courts that could break into panels, hear a lot more cases, incorporate central staff, which we do at the Court of Appeals. And it's amazing, with only 15 judges for the 9th most populous state, that we're able to have a Court of Appeals that functions that well. But it's because it was a result of a study commission, the Bell Commission, where we looked at the data and we said, how can we take the pressure off the Supreme Court? They're not hearing all the cases they should, and let's start the Court of Appeals. So we used panels, we used staff attorneys. We didn't grant oral argument in every case. We didn't publish every opinion the court issued. And so we really put together an efficient court. Let me share a couple statistics to brag about the Court of Appeals a little bit. We're the 9th largest state. Tennessee, a much smaller state, has 24 appellate judges. Remember, we have 15. Michigan, well, Ohio has 69. So that just gives you some perspective of the efficiencies that we have with our Court of Appeals. So let's imagine that future court system. Let's talk about what we've done and how we're trying to get there. So as Donna shared and as the video talked a little bit about, we had 65 members of a commission divided into 5 committees. And it was very important for me for this to be multidisciplinary, because every North Carolinian is a stakeholder of the court system. I know if we break it down, we have internal stakeholders, right? We have those who actually work within the system. But that's only about 6,000 of us, plus a lot of local government stakeholders that help facilitate the process. So that means that there's about 10 million minus 6,000 that are external stakeholders and very much benefit from a court system that works fairly, accessibly, and impartially. So what is our wish list moving forward? Well, I was always surprised that south of the border, the great state of South Carolina, the Palmetto State, that every trial judge, which are referred to as circuit judges in South Carolina, had a law clerk. And I'm sure some of the law graduates here today wish that our trial judges had law clerks. What happens when you don't have the research capability for the judge is the quality of decision in more complex cases and sometimes not so complex cases, just the numbers of cases that judges are having to process, that the quality of justice can suffer, that cases are not always decided as precisely in accord with the rule of law as all of us would hope because of sheer numbers, because of lack of access to research opportunities. So one of the things we've done already is establish a fellows program where we are hiring 8 attorneys, the best and the brightest, and they are literally free agents that over 300 judges can call upon when they have a tough case. And what we're trying to do is provide research to judges when they need it. They call us and say, I have a tough issue. Can the fellows help me with this issue? And what the fellows will do is put together the highest quality research available and then give that to the judge. The decision remains with the judge. But already we are getting calls from many parts of the state. This office has only been in operation a few months, and it's going great guns, and it's getting spectacular reviews. So no, every one of our trial judges still does not have a law clerk, but we hope over time that this office may actually be able to be decentralized, where we have a few attorneys up in Division 4, which is in the western part of the state, and as you can imagine with numbers, 3 brings you closer to Raleigh, Division 2 incorporates the Raleigh region, and then Division 1 is down in eastern North Carolina. So we are very excited about this program, and we think it's going to enhance the quality of justice in our state courts. Secondly, a very important program for the state court systems is known as the North Carolina Business Court. Years ago, precisely 1996, there was a real desire among some of the corporations in our state to have a court that would operate with a much more rapid docket. And we would not have cases in any way that would languish for a long period of time. And so in 1996, our business court was started with 1 judge, and that judge was stationed in Greensboro. In 2003, I was honored to serve as chair of a commission known as the Future of the Business Court. And Chief Justice I. Beverly Lake asked me to take a look at where we were with the business court and how we could improve the business court. We immediately went from 1 judge to 3 because all the survey data showed that North Carolina businesses really wanted to go to the business court and get the advantages of an expedited docket and ways to speed along the resolution of that dispute. We now have gone beyond 3 judges, and we are located in several parts of the state, here in Raleigh and Charlotte, and also at Wake Forest School of Law, which is our newest location, as well as the initial location of Greensboro. So one of the aspects of the commission that we realized is that we were way behind in technology. If you compared the technology, if you went to our website, you would see that it's basically first-generation technology. Now, there's several people in the room that know a lot more what first-generation internet technology means than me. But I will use that term as a discussion point because I think it reflects to all of us, since the first-generation technology is 1990s technology, that shows you how far behind we are in our technology. So the Strategic Technology Plan is a document that looks at this situation over a period of years, and with certain guide points and time frames and individuals who are accountable to help us make that process, we hope to start catching up to the other institutions of society. Oftentimes, we're behind other branches of government because we have not always been a favored beneficiary of appropriated funds. Historically, the courts, though we're one of 3 branches of government, we hover right around 2.1% of the state budget. And if you take a careful look and kind of take the wrapper off those numbers, you realize that we generate fees that are equivalent to the majority of our budget. So here we are generating a lot of fees, but yet we're at about 2.1% of the budget. Our goal is not to increase spending. Our goal is to have targeted investments so that we can do a better job for the people of North Carolina. If this strategic technology plan is fully funded, it's just like any business. You invest in infrastructure, you invest in resources that can bring in the case of a business, a reasonable profit. For a government, profit is not our goal. In the court system, justice is our goal. But these resources can be used to make the system more open and accessible to all those who use the system. So that's our goal with the technology. Some of these steps we've already taken using technology. You can go online now any time of the day and already pay off that citation. And I can tell that a few people have already utilized that technology. We're hoping to improve it, where you might even be able to negotiate with the assistant district attorney. Maybe get a better deal before you pay off that ticket. And so instead of waiting in line in a courtroom somewhere in the state. This next point is very important to me because it goes to the physical safety of our people. And that's the eCourts Domestic Violence Protection Project. We've had spouses killed because by the time they filled out a physical warrant at the courthouse and it was processed, an angry spouse literally hunted them down, whether it be at their workplace or someone else out in the community. We've had fatalities in this regard. So with the eCourts plan, they can be in any safe place where they have an internet connection. She or he, whoever the victim of the domestic violence is. And from that moment on, everything is handled online. The protection happens immediately, right? And any police officer has real-time access to that information on the computer right in their squad car. So they don't have to call to headquarters and find out, do you have some paperwork that's been filed here? This is very time sensitive, and that's why this project has been so successful. We've won 2 national awards. Started in Alamance County, we're in 5 counties now, and resources permitting, we'll be in over half the counties by 2019. Now, I'd prefer to be in all 100, but we obviously have limitations of resources and ability to get this done. This project saves lives, and that's what it's all about. Now, not a day goes by. Most recently, it was London Bridge in England. You think you're safely eating right there at a very nice tourist spot, and all of a sudden people tragically show up and it turns into a crime scene. Obviously, this is one of the greatest challenges of Western civilization. But we also have to think about what can we do in our own state to be better prepared. I'd rather be proactive as Chief Justice and make sure that our court facilities are safe than wake up a year and a half from now and realize that we have people that have been harmed because of our inaction, because government did not work well. And so I have launched a courthouse and cybersecurity task force. And I'm very pleased that former DPS Secretary Frank Perry has agreed to chair this effort. And with 23 years as an FBI agent and having worked with Homeland Security and seeing how federal and state government work together and coordinate in the security area, he will be a terrific chair. This is not intended to be a flashy commission. This is intended to make sure that when our citizens and our employees are in our court facilities, we've done everything possible to keep them safe. Can we ensure anyone's safety? Absolutely not. Can we follow best practices to make these facilities as safe as possible? Absolutely. And this kind of segues into the whole Efiling Initiative. I was over in Greensboro at the Downtown Kiwanis Club, and I gave this real elaborate talk about e-filing. And a very educated individual rose from her seat and said, Chief Justice, can you secure and protect the integrity of the information that is housed on this e-filing system? And all of a sudden, I was confronted with the question that from the president on down, every institution in society is now vulnerable to hacking, is now vulnerable to security issues with websites. And I didn't really have the answer I wanted. But I did tell her this, that we were going to make sure we did everything possible to secure the integrity of that information. And that's what, in fact, we will be doing. So when we talk about e-filing, we're really talking about what we call a virtual courthouse. Imagine a courthouse where when a case begins, whether it's a criminal or civil case, that happens through input of that data directly into the computer system. So that is in fact the filing aspect. And for years we were slowed in North Carolina because there was a concern about how people of modest means would be able to input data onto the system. But we've solved that riddle. We're going to make sure we have trained personnel in every courthouse that can help individuals that do not have the technology skills to enter data on the system. So in no way will this system impede your ability as a citizen of North Carolina to file a complaint in the system. That we're ensuring as we prepare to go online. The second aspect of a case, whether it be criminal or civil, is everything that happens from the point of inception until you have a disposition. And so I want you to think about where we're at now. We have old-fashioned expando files in every courthouse. And that initial complaint, in a civil case, all of the discovery materials, kind of a fancy term for interrogatories and deposition transcripts, requests for admission, all of the tools that lawyers use to try to reduce the number of factual issues for a trial. All of these materials have been kept in expando folders. And each year, we have over 30 million new documents that we have to find a place for. So what do? Like any government, we rent additional storage space, right? So with the e-filing system, as these materials go from hard copy to a gigabyte document, hope that sounds halfway accurate, we can get these materials on the main server, and yes, we have double redundancy and we have backups, and one of the questions moving forward is it enough to have double and triple redundant e-facilities? Do we also still have to retain at least one hard copy? And we're working through all these issues. At the end of the day, we're going to make sure that we have integrity of those case files. That's the bottom line. So the final stage, and our courts have not been that quick to move in the e-court's direction on disposition. I will tell you at the Supreme Court, when I circulate an opinion for my colleagues to review, it is circulated old-fashioned hard copy. Okay, we're still there at that point. So that's where we're hoping to make progress too. I think some of the progress here will be generational. I'm in the over 50 crowd, right? And I think as more and more decision makers have been brought through computers in grade school, middle school, high school, I didn't see, let's forget about laptops, I didn't see well, we knew about mainframes in college, but I literally did not see a PC until law school. And so that's younger than many in the room, but a lot farther beyond others in the room who were aware, who interacted with computers from kindergarten on. So it's a brave new world, and I think the thing that should encourage us in the e-courts effort is that 76% of Americans, according to the most recent polling data, want more court resources available online. And if you go under 40, the number skyrockets to 86%. So this is the future, and I think if we navigate this path well, not only can we have a better court system, but also can start having cost savings after we make these investments in technologies that will prevent us from generating so many paper documents and having so much courthouse space just to store these documents. Let's talk about a few current events now. Some of these were discussed on the commission. One is the legislation that I know Becky and John have been so helpful with. And let's talk a little bit about it, because there's, as with all issues, we celebrate the fact that everybody has a right to give different opinions about legislation. And this is a topic where we've heard a lot of opinions. And this is a proposal to ensure that for nonviolent offenses, 16 and 17-year-old dispositions are handled in juvenile court rather than in adult court. So the first question is, why do we want to do this? All the data shows that if you require the whole family to take part in that juvenile situation, and you make it onerous on the young person, counseling, you can't do this, and we're going to watch you for a while, that you get better outcomes. So what happens if you have a 16-year-old who steals a pendant from the mall? It gets put on the internet, and they go to adult court. Now, by the way, that's exactly what happens now. So we've had a young person that steals a $12 pendant from Carytown Center. Her name is put on the internet because she's been charged criminally in adult court. Okay? So what do we do to restore this young person? Nothing. In adult court, her name will be on a docket. She'll have to show up that day, and it'll be about 30 seconds, maybe a minute or two of the district court judge's time. There's no effort to find out what were the underlying causes. Why are you stealing things, right? Is there something going on right now in your life that this is an outlet for you? We try to get to the bottom of it so we have better resources. And this is why 49 states have already made this change. Now, why have we not made the change? I think it's just inertia. Government's good at inertia, right? So in 1919, without any research, without any thought about what might be best, we established adult criminal jurisdiction at age 16. Now, I know I need not talk about all the fairness aspects of that, right? You're not even old enough to volunteer for the Navy, except in time of war. My father-in-law volunteered for the Navy in 1943 at the age of 17. And yes, they let him in, and they welcomed him. But in time of peace, it's going to be hard to get in the military at 16. Well, people can't vote at 16. So we had a fairness issue. But I don't predicate this program on fairness. I predicate it on results. In the 49 states where we have used this approach, we get better outcomes. And that's what a justice system is trying to do. Now, let me debunk a few of the rumors that have gone around. If you have a violent felony, it's going to adult court. One time I had to sentence a 13-year-old in adult court. Okay? It's a long time ago when I was a trial court judge. But if you have a serious violent felony, that case will go where it's always gone. It'll go to adult court. And that's sad, but it's just the way it has to be, because public safety will always be paramount. So what about the nonviolent offenders, which, by the way, is 95% of the crime involving these teenagers? We know we've gone from a rural agrarian society where young people were working out on the farms and milking the cows and getting up early. And I've raised kids now. They've gone from producers to what? Consumers, right? The latest iPhone. Have to have access to the computer. It's challenging to be a parent. But the bottom line is that with this program, which, by the way, over 70% of North Carolinians support, and this is a curious statistic, the Department of Public Safety surveyed parents whose children had been arrested at 16 and 17. Over 90% thought their kid would be going to juvenile court only to find out that the children's name is on the internet. Now, the age of the internet does make this a more urgent issue. Unless you're just going to take everyone who's ever stolen a pendant and just bring them right into the criminal justice system at a cost of $28,000 a year. What we're trying to do is turn around those we can. Now, we know we're not going to turn around all of them. And I guarantee you, we're there. We're waiting as they come back in the adult criminal system. But let me share a story. You've got two young people, one in North Carolina, one in Tennessee. They've both stolen that same $12 pendant. The Tennessee youth goes into juvenile court. Her whole family's involved in the treatment. She doesn't come back to court. She learns her lesson. She goes to the University of Tennessee, gets a degree in 4 years. She's one of 3 finalists with IBM for a marketing job. The young person in Raleigh steals the pendant from Carytown Center. Her name is put on the internet. She and her parents think the situation is beyond them because she goes to criminal court. She's not going to get put in jail for this, right? It's a very quick disposition. She goes back for the rest of her junior year, continues her college prep courses. She goes to UNC Wilmington, gets the same degree that the young person in Tennessee did. IBM runs the background check. 3 very promising young people. Do you think the North Carolinian will get the job? This is also about the reality of the global marketplace, the reality of corporate background investigations. To be sure, if somebody has a serious crime in their background, IBM needs to be aware of it. But is one incident at 16 where she stole a $12 pendant, learned from her lesson, should that keep her from getting the job and the Tennessee young person working for IBM instead? So beyond the better outcomes and what we think and know from the experience of 49 other states will work better to rehabilitate as many young people as possible, we also know from the realities of the global marketplace and the way the economy has emerged online, as well as corporate background investigations, that we also better take this step so we don't have idle young people that other states have been more successful in placing. And that's a reality we just have to be cognizant of. Now, the 2 other issues I want to touch on, then I want to save time for questions. And I was coached up front that this was informal, and so I do want to have some Q&A to the extent there are questions. These statistics are so mind-boggling, I don't know how this has happened. And I'm talking about the opioid and drug abuse epidemic in our society. 1,500 North Carolinians died last year of drug abuse, drug overdose. Since 1999, there has been a 350% increase in drug abuse deaths. 350%. Since 2010, there has been an 884% increase in heroin-related deaths. My friends, that's just 7 years ago. That's shocking. And each of us should be shocked by these statistics, and what can we do to change this? This is a complex issue, and there's a lot of folks that are going to have to give a little bit to make this work. There are things we can do to make this better. This problem has not always been with us, and we can change these numbers. And that is why I've accepted membership on the Regional Judicial Opioid Initiative, because we are looking at what are some ways that all the states in this region of the country can make an impact. Let me share a few other statistics that should make everybody about jump out of their seat. CBS had a report of the top 20 cities where the opioid epidemic is worse. 4 of those cities, 20%, are right here in North Carolina. That's so concerning to me as a citizen, as I know it is to you. Wilmington, Fayetteville, Hickory, and Jacksonville are in the top 20 cities in the country where this epidemic is raging the worst. And I, for one, would like to change that here in North Carolina and help other states change that as well. Remember when we were growing up and the Vietnam War, still motor vehicle collisions caused more deaths than Vietnam. Well, this is pretty scary. Drug abuse deaths have now surpassed motor vehicle deaths as a cause of death. And did we ever think that was possible, that drug overdose deaths would actually overtake motor vehicle deaths? And to me, that's an amazing statistic. So maybe it's good that I'm wrapping it up on a point about civics education, because we have a lot to do, don't we? And I want to thank you for being here today, because I know in many respects I'm preaching to the choir. The people here, each of you, are learning about the issues, you're educating yourself so you can be that good citizen that we all aspire to be. So in that spirit, I want to share a couple shock poll statistics, national polls. One is from 2009, a Princeton poll, and one is from 2014, Annenberg. The 2009 poll, get ready, only 25% of U.S. adults could name all 3 branches of government. 1 out of 4. 44% could not name a single branch of government. The Annenberg study, we went from 25 to 26% who could name all 3, and a little progress here. we went from 44% down to 31% in the number who could not name any branch. So we're now at about 1 out of 3. We know this too is an epidemic. It's an epidemic of citizenship. And we know that a republic cannot long endure if we, the government, the people of this country, do not learn about the institutions of government, stay apprised of current developments, and hold public officials accountable. So what I've done in the courts, working with the communications office, and Will's been a big part of this, as well as we've asked for help from the Bar Association, because we have attorneys in all 100 counties, but we also want other prominent citizens added to the Speakers Bureau. And we're working with the State Board of Education, Bill Kobe, working with Mark Johnson at DPI, and we're trying to make sure that the standard curriculum that 1.5 million school children learn from teaches these kids about civics, teaches them about the rule of law, teaches them about why this knowledge is critical to be a successful citizen. So we're very excited about this initiative. Anybody in this room could sign up, and what it would be is that we have some standard material that you would go into a classroom and share, or that you would go into a civic group that asks for someone to come address them. So it's very exciting. It's almost the way it should be. Volunteers going in and teaching fellow citizens about the importance of this great government we've been given. Remember, this government started as an experiment based upon the Enlightenment, based upon all the theories from the Renaissance about, yes, a people could govern themselves, even though history was replete with situations where others governed us. And so the challenge moving forward here in 2017 could not be more staggering. We have the data here to show that people are largely unaware of how government works, unaware of why we have 3 branches. The whole design there was to promote and perpetuate liberty by separating power. Lord Acton said, power tends to corrupt. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. And we know that 3 branches of government was to make sure that we had one branch that made laws, one branch that carried out the laws, and then yet a 3rd branch that interpreted laws and resolved disputes in our courts. And that is the foundation of our government, and that is how we will perpetuate liberty and freedom moving forward. So it's an honor to be here with you today, and I'll finish now, so we'll have a few minutes for questions if anybody has them. Thank you very much.